Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Okay, I hit the button, guys. I pressed the button. This adventure is begun. I'm excited. I can't wait to tell you about my guest today. She's a badass, absolute rock star. I can't believe she's even on this pod with us. But you are going to be learning today from a seasoned marketing executive, a thought leader, decades of experience in B2B, B2C, and nonprofit. And this is a really cool triangle that we'll get into more later on. She's got background in coaching and storytelling, multi-channel, you name it, growing brands, awareness, all of that jazz. Background in library and in information. Senior Director, Content and Partnerships at Challenger, Stevie Kuenn. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Casey. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to open up my brain and just pour all your knowledge in. So in order to do that, in order to dislodge my brain, here, let me pass you this thing.
Okay.
It's heavy.
Wow, go. It's huge. I haven't seen that since I went to Bryce Canyon National Park.
There it is.
So I'll take it. Okay, I got the hammer. Got
Thor's hammer? Okay.
Got Thor's hammer.
Now take that hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Okay. I'm going to... There we go. Okay. So this is really, I think, a misconception that a lot of people find themselves in. And it's that you cannot operate on a focus group of one, and you cannot let one element of feedback guide your strategy. You gotta put your head, you gotta set your own brain aside, and you gotta focus on what your audience wants. And you really need to define who is your audience and understand them. And that's who you speak to, even if it doesn't necessarily feel right to you.
It may not feel right. That's a really interesting point. Man, why do we make the focus group ourselves?
Well, I think it's like there's a couple of reasons, okay? So I think one, we live in a really reactive society now. Like, how many of us have put up an innocuous Facebook post about, and this is going back a while, like maybe like, I like the Kinks more than the Beatles. I had really great avocado toast this morning and gotten a comment that's like, avocado toast is overrated, or how dare you? And I think like those are examples that are not provocative in my mind, but we live in this reactive society, and we've all been conditioned by, I think it was either Jim Collins or Daniel Pink. I don't remember which one, but they had that argument in either Good to Great or Drive about how unhappy customers are more likely to complain than happy customers are to praise. And so you need to put your energy into offsetting those complaints more than necessarily growing the joy. Now, I think that we're also all consumers now, and buyers in B2B are bringing those expectations into their business purchasing. And so we as marketers and sellers, I'm going to focus more on the marketing part of my life.
Right.
We bring our own experiences and biases into this too. And, and I think this is like kind of the third thing I want to note is that, and I think this is really key, is people are staying in the workforce longer. People are retiring later. Even when they retire, they're moving into consulting. They're moving into becoming a facilitator. They're still working. And then we have people who are, maybe they're foregoing college and going straight to work. So we've got 4 generations right now in our audiences, and they consume information differently. They convert differently. And as marketers, we have to align our strategies we have to identify who is the right audience. What are they doing? What are they doing? Not what they're saying. I think that's really important. What are they doing? And then we have to align our strategy to that. And it's hard because for the first 2 reasons I laid out, We live in a reactive society and we're all consumers. And we see things through that lens. We really got to fight against that and focus on what is it that really motivates our audience to act. Um, and I think that's why this continues.
Yeah, and what an interesting point around what they are doing and acting, not saying. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So one of the first times I really narrowed in on this in my career is when I worked for the National Restaurant Association. The association is a nonprofit, but it has a LLC inside it. If you've ever worked in a restaurant or been to a restaurant, you've probably seen the name ServSafe for
Mm,
food
mhm.
safety certification, and the National Restaurant Association owns ServSafe. And so every year, the association used to do this survey of consumers about what they wanted from restaurants. And they would always say, like, oh, I want healthier options. Because, of course, when you ask people, they're going to say, like, yeah, of course I want healthy options. Of course I want to take care of myself. And I'm not saying they did this because of the survey, although I'm sure it influenced it. So, you may remember like a lot of fast casual, a lot of chains, McDonald's in particular, introduced salads and apple slices and things like that, but people didn't buy them. And so that's where I think it goes back to, because if you're going to McDonald's, let's be honest, are you going there because you want a
Yeah,
salad? No, you're not. You're going there because you got a craving for a Big Mac, you know, maybe you tried it on a little too much at the corporate party last night, and the cure is french fries and a Coca-Cola,
right.
or
Or Egg McMuffin,
or an egg
right?
muffin, or, you're in an airport, or your kids are, like, super obsessed with, like, Pokemon, and there's a Pokemon toy in the Happy Meal. Like, you're not going there to get a salad. And so I think,
Right.
like, to me, it's just you have to observe what are the reasons people are going there. And, like, I get it. It feel like, you're hearing all these data points. Yes, I want salads. I want healthier options. I would love that. But, like, in reality, consumers didn't act that way with certain restaurants. So, and I think that really unlocked something for me. And I think too, like I'll weave a little bit of challenge in here a little early, but that's one of the things that Challenger was really built on was, this was back in our days where we were owned by CEB. They went and they surveyed thousands of B2B buyers and asked them, you know, what really matters to you in loyalty. And, it wasn't great products, or service, which I think is what a lot of people would look at. And it wasn't, like pricing necessarily.
Yeah.
It was they create a great sales experience and they give me insights about my business and my community. And I think that it's just, again, it just comes back to people may say they want one thing, but the reality is you have to look at the data, you have to watch them, you have to really dig deep and understand them rather than just sort of listening to what they say to you.
And you got man, this is I love this because it's challenging. It feels right hearing this, but it's challenging. I'd love to go back to the other feels where you're saying it may not feel right. Because man, so many times I've made decisions like gut decisions of like, that feels right, but this kind of feels like it's challenging me to say, yeah, it may feel kind of dumb. It's like watching a television ad that someone spent $1 million to put it on the Super Bowl. You're like, that ad sucks. And it's like, well, maybe it does, or maybe it wasn't for you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, something we talk about in Challenger, and I'm going to use this as an example because when I started working here, this really unlocked something for me. And we have this concept within our methodology called constructive tension, where you challenge your customers to think differently, and you ask them powerful open-ended questions, and you strategically use silence to help them really think through some of the things you're bringing them and saying to them. And one of the things I am really struck by in that is we tell, when we're educating sellers, like, this may feel counterintuitive, but it works. So when I said, like, before about, like, being right, I think I simplified it a little bit, but it's really like sometimes you have to act against your gut. Sometimes you have to act against
Yeah.
what you're feeling because maybe there is a better way, and it's data and behavior that reveals that to you.
Especially when you're not the buyer, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you're the marketer, you're not the buyer. Sometimes you can, if you fall into that trap, and all marketers tend to have had one of these jobs where you're marketing to marketers and it's like super fun, but oftentimes you're marketing to like an IT specialist or a CFO, and you're not a CFO, it's not even close to being a CFO. So unless you investigate, you don't really know.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to share something that like I learned this lesson myself,
Yeah.
over time in a lot of ways, but I'm going to give you a really specific example. When I was at the Pat Tillman Foundation where I was the director of marketing and I ran the marketing function, one of the things we did was we introduced a store because, yeah, I'm sure a number of your listeners know the story of Pat Tillman. If they don't, I highly recommend John Krakauer's biography of him, uh, where I think I have it over here. Let's see.
Oh yeah, what's it called?
Uh, where men win glory. He is a national treasure and the nicest guy. He's still a huge supporter of the foundation, and it was a real highlight of my life and my career to get to work with him. But that's besides the point.
It's great that he's a nice guy too, because sometimes you get artists and authors who are like, "Man, your book is amazing, but I don't really wanna hang out with you," you know?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. They always say never meet your heroes, but every one of my heroes I've had occasion to met have been great. And so I'm
That's
I'm I'm
awesome.
really, you know, I'm really grateful for that. But so Pat, gave up an NFL career to join the military after 9/11 because he felt called to do something bigger than himself. And, one of the things we learned, like we used to sell in our online store, like old t-shirts from past races. And then, we were sort of challenged by our CEO at the time, like, hey, think about this. Do you think there's other things people might want to wear? And it gives them an opportunity to, of course, support the foundation, but also to like bring our message out into the world. And so, we developed some t-shirts that were original. We sold hats, we sold drinkware. And one of my direct reports, who's about 10 years younger than me, came in and she was like, I really think we should do a belt bag. And I was a teenager in the 90s. So I was like, are you serious? No, like, why would anybody wear that? And she's like, they're really popular. They're a good way to a lot of older people wear them, but a lot of younger people do too. And it's a great way for us, because we were very concerned about Pat's story being lost to younger generations. He and I are roughly the same age. And so like for me, that's a real
Oh, wow.
cultural touchstone moment. But
Yeah.
for younger generations, not so much. And she's like, I really think it would sell really well, and they're inexpensive to produce, so our margin would be really good. And I was like, "You know what? I recognize I'm bringing my biases to this. We know what we know about our audience, and we know that they want to support us, but they don't necessarily, we'd kind of hit a limit on how much they wanted to buy shirts at that point. And so we wanted to try some other products. And I said, you know what? Do a small run, track how carefully it sells, and let's see what happens. And, we sold out like within a month. And I
Wow.
had to kind of, say like, and it was just one of those moments for me where it was like, I am operating as a focus group of one and bringing my own experience as a consumer and my own feelings about this into this. And this is actually something that our audience of 20 to let's say 60-year-old, you know, folk veterans and Arizonans really wanted. And it was something too, we had a pretty healthy number of scholars and it was something our scholars really wanted too. And so it was just one of those moments where I really had to investigate my own biases. And I do go back to that a lot because to that end, I was not the consumer of this product. I was the
Right.
marketer. And
Right.
the consumer really wanted this.
And the marketer's like, "I've got pockets. I don't need it."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I know,
right,
exactly. Like, I have a backpack.
right. It's like the iPad. I've got a laptop and I've got a phone. What do I need
Yeah,
this thing for? Oh, no.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
this is to your earlier point where you said, "Hey, at any given time, we might be marketing to 4 generations, the folks staying in the workforce longer, and you got these new people and a
Yeah,
little bit older than my kids where they're saying all sorts of weird words like it slaps, it's fire, but actually every time I say that, they're like, "Dad, no one says that," right? So to their generation, no one says that. I'm like,
yeah,
"Yeah, but the college kids do." I certainly don't. Well, I do just to be annoying, but you know the thing? There's like all these different vocabs of
yeah,
and then some of us people are like, "Yeah, I just like the word rad," that thing's rad,
yeah,
Bring back rad.
yeah, I'm doing my best to support you in fantasy, but
How do you balance all these? And it almost seems like it gives it another slice of demographics that now you have to contend with, and then now you have these, like, multidimensional 4 by 4s, and you have to market to everybody.
yeah, well, and I think that's where it helps to go back, like, really know your audience, like, know your audience, and, like, there's gonna be there you know, this is a podcast that I think primarily B2B folks listen to,
For
so
sure.
that is helpful because we can narrow in on an ICP. We're not Gap, you know, um, we don't need to market to everybody. Like, we don't need to make
Yeah.
pants for everybody. What we do need to do is really set our priorities and think about our ideal customer profile. I think it just goes back to ICP. Who is your ICP, and then monitor what you're doing against who's consuming it. And I'm going to use an example of Challenger does webinars every month. um I am very involved in that process, and one of the things we've discovered is we have a lot of sales leaders who come. We also have a lot, and that's our ICP, is CROs, VPs of sales. We also speak to heads of learning, heads of sales enablement, but we're really focused on C-suite, VP level decision makers. But we've also seen, like, we have a lot of ICPs come to our webinars. We have a lot, and really what we can do is we can work with them and turn them into champions of our brand and mobilizers who, advocate for us at their own organizations. And I think the key is, you narrow in on your ICP, you observe what your audience does. And now when we do our webinars, I still pitch that content to our sales leaders because I know that they're ultimately who we're talking to. And I know a lot of them are on the line, or they're watching the recording, or they're getting it on demand.
Right.
But I want something that our ICPs can also learn from. And so it's just like when you're in that situation where you do have to speak to a broader audience, you look at it and you say, what is the information I have to have here that can teach everybody in the moment something? Because to me,
Mhm.
where I think marketing works best is when it's educating and it's not selling.
100%. I always felt like when you teach, you win, right? You win the
Yeah.
deals, you win all the things. But when you're preaching or pushing something at someone or trying to force them to make a decision, everybody rejects that. Like, come on, leave me alone. Well, yeah, okay, educating. So you really got, but you got to know your stuff. But if you're not the buyer, how do you educate?
Well, I think that's where you lean on your subject matter experts. Something else
Yeah,
I think, something else I've learned in my career is there is, I think, often a natural tension between sales and marketing. But something else I've learned in my career, to quote the Australian poet Lord, is we have to be on each other's team. I think that ultimately sales and marketing function best when they work together rather than against each other. And so I think when you're not the buyer, you have a responsibility to seek out your leaders, from product, from sales, from client success, and get that voice of customer perspective. Understand, like, hey, what's the data underlying our product development? What's our roadmap? What is, I would never say ask what keeps them up at night, but I would say,
right.
because that's not very Challenger, but I think it is, what are you hearing in the field? And then you go out and you do your research. You dig into your data. You look at the data that's in your Salesforce. You look at what your metrics are telling you in terms of engagement with content. Like, I actually feel pretty strongly that there's vanity metrics that aren't as meaningful. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think page views are a particularly meaningful metric anymore, but I do think time spent on site might be. I think you really dig into those pieces of data and you talk to people who know what they're talking about. Like, I think the number one thing that makes anyone successful in any field is curiosity. And I think when you
Mm.
lose your curiosity about something, that's probably when you should retire, because I just don't I think it's curiosity that makes things change, and it's curiosity that makes things interesting.
Yeah. And it also keeps you humble too. Like, or if you're in a position of humility where you don't know all the answers, but you're right, you get to a point where you feel like you've accumulated everything, you're not learning. That's
Yeah.
you got to move. Switch it up, change an industry,
Yeah. Well, we have
do
a whole
something
world
different.
where I think the most powerful thing someone can say in a conversation sometimes, not always, but sometimes, is "I don't know," because nobody can have all the answers. And it's okay it's so much better to say, "I don't know. How do we figure this out together? How do we collaborate toward an answer? Where do I find this information? How do I lean on your expertise?" Than to try and bumble toward an answer that you truly don't understand.
Mm. Now, I love that you had a caveat saying usually it's good to say. Can you think of any situations where it's better not to say I don't know?
Um, I mean, I think, you're putting me on the spot a little
I
bit,
am. I
so
am putting it
that's
in this.
okay. I think, I would say, when there's an area where you do have expertise, it's very important, I think, to qualify that "I don't know," or to not rely on it. Do your
Yeah.
pre-work before your calls, prep
Yeah.
yourself, that sort of thing. Be as prepared as you can. And, sometimes you have to reframe the conversation toward something where you do have the answer. So,
Yeah.
I realize that's more high level than specific.
No, no, no. I'm just curious. I think what I'm getting from that too is around expectations, right?
Yeah.
If people like if your job like if you're supposed to know the answer, no, take that as an L and go learn it for the next call. But then,
Correct. Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right.
Like, I think, you referenced this earlier, but I do have a master's degree in library and information studies, and,
Yeah.
I took a course on, reference, and, if you are the reference librarian, "I don't know" is an unacceptable answer because
Right.
but, like, you may not know the answer right then, but you need to know how to go find the answer.
Right.
I think if you are, you know, in a meeting with your head of product and you've been asked, like, "Hey, how many of our, podcast listeners are
Or
customers?"
or awesome. 100%.
Yeah, right. Like, I think you have a responsibility, like,
I
podcast
agree.
metrics being what they are, it can be tricky to figure that out. But I think you have a responsibility to be prepared in that situation.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, I can confirm that we've done studies. Every single person that listens to this podcast is an absolute rock star and amazing.
Perfect.
And it's super smart. So smart, but also they know they need to learn more like me.
Yeah.
So I am all about learning. Sometimes I feel like a caveman of marketing. Um, I heard you say something else that was really interesting. That question, what keeps you up at night? I've heard that circulate around, and you're saying don't. It's not very challenger to ask that question. Why is that?
Because I think when you are so I in our business, what we have found through years of study is that buyers want you to bring them something new. They want you to bring insight. They want you to help them understand their business better, understand how to succeed better. And so I do think there's a way for you for it is important when you're in that sort of scenario to say, like, to really do the research, to ask that, but not to your customers, right? You ask that and you go and you do the research and you see, like, what is it, if you work for a business that's where your ICP is CFOs, Harvard Business Review is right there. Wall Street Journal is right there. You've probably got some clients who would be willing to, you know, who work with a CSM or an account director who can tell you like, "Hey, this is what's top of mind for them." So then you can go and you can develop like that answer on your own. And so
Yeah.
I think that there is a place for you to be able to say, "This is what's keeping people up in your industry at night." It's less about that, it's more about, "Here's what you need to do to address that." And I think that's, again, to go back to marketing as education, I see that as a fundamental responsibility for myself as a content marketer to anticipate what those trends and questions are and investigate the answers using, the resources available to me as a information seeker, as well as someone who has access to some amazing subject matter experts.
Yeah. Man, this is what I love about Challenger for both sales and marketing is that people are often tired of discovery. They get fatigued, discovery fatigue. Like, stop asking me about what keeps me up at night. Like I do 4 demos. Everyone's like, "What's your pain? Can you start out by telling me more about your business?" It's like, I love where you're coming from. Like, do the research. You can certainly find out what keeps everyone else up at night, and that probably and like come knowing what their problems probably are, and then present some things and see which ones that I love. It kind of flips the script. It's so intentional.
Well, and I think too, right now I'm working on a presentation about storytelling. And one of the points that I'm working with two phenomenal people on it. By the time this airs, it'll be available on demand at challengerinc.com. Sorry, I had to get my little plug in.
Hell yeah, we're gonna
Um,
link right in the show notes.
Fantastic.
Let's
So
do
it's
it.
led by Michael Schomburger, who is one of our principal executive advisor, and Charisse Bigger, who is a fantastic seller. And we're talking about storytelling and some challenger concepts within it. And one of the things we have discussed is the power of listening and the importance of listening and storytelling. And like for me, that's such a powerful note because you have to listen actively and you have to listen to understand, not just respond, because listening is what's going to reveal what you need to know about the people you're working with and to understand where they're struggling and how you can help them get through that struggle. And so for me, and again, like when you talk to someone about storytelling, I was listening to an episode today of Hardcore Marketing Podcast where, the guest was talking about how people think content is just writing and it's really storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about storytelling, people are like, "Oh, how am I going to paint this picture? What words am I going to use? How am I going to make people feel?" If they're doing it right, they're thinking about how they're going to make people feel afterward. You have to do all those things, but you also have to bake in a period where you're listening and really hearing what your audience is saying and seeing what they're doing. And to me, that is just such an important part of storytelling. And I don't know that enough people think about that.
Oh, it's so clear that I mean we could do a whole nother show on storytelling. There's so much to it. But the idea of listening to really understand makes it so much easier than to tell the story because you have the context. You're not just parroting a story. You're sharing what they felt and that I mean that's captivating, right? To listen to topics like that. That's the opposite of some dry, boring industry piece is like a story where someone learned a powerful lesson. It's like it's unstoppable content.
Exactly. And I think too, when you do it in the right way, you make it scalable, you make it recognizable. I think sometimes, I had this experience at the foundation where we were a relatively small foundation. We had fewer than 30 employees. We were very mighty,
Yeah.
we had great relationships with the NFL in particular, and a couple other organizations. I'm going to shout out my pals at Tech Systems. Hi, Kara. I know that they are currently prepping for Pat's Run in Arizona on the 13th. But one of the things we did there is, even though we were small, we really looked at what we were a national foundation with international reach. And, we partnered with the NFL. We put on a 30,000 person race. We really didn't let our size determine what we were capable of. And I take a lot of lessons I learned at this, small foundation where I, had a
Yeah.
team of 3, and I will put those lessons into place for the rest of my career. We were really encouraged to look at what we could do with the resources we had and align them in such a way that we could really do some pretty incredible things. And I think that you can think big while also being realistic to the situation you're in
Yeah.
and execute some pretty amazing stuff as a result.
Having the restriction and the scarcity has uh, it's so much innovation can come from that.
Yeah.
And I agree. Some of the best marketing I've ever seen have been from nonprofits that didn't have the giant budgets to just go waste money at some convention they had to be really smart and use whatever they had and really maximize really efficient marketing campaign can come from not having an infinite budget.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like we all know going viral is not a strategy, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think there are things that catch lightning in a bottle. Like when you look
Yeah.
back at the most successful marketing campaigns, that I can think of off the top of my head, it's Apple think different. Like not everyone's going to have money for a Super Bowl ad to smash a to recreate 1984 in 30 seconds. But
Right.
it's also, ALS's challenge or the ALS the like water dumping challenge they did where
Yep. I
everyone
remember
would.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
I did
Well,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it raised millions of dollars and a ton of awareness, or it's, after the failure of the power grid in Texas, the Texas Diaper Bank was flooded with money, because
Yeah.
people really do care. And so I think it's about, you know, telling an authentic story about making someone's life better, whether it's their work life, whether it's their personal life, it's really just capturing that emotion. And I think you can do that at any budget and at any size. Don't get me wrong, you need to have some budget. I think there's things you cannot accomplish with $0.
Right.
Going viral is not a strategy. But I think at the heart of it is those things succeeded because they had a really good story that motivated someone.
Yeah. Again, back to stories. And one of the things I'm really curious, speaking of stories, is like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know all these things? Like, it's very clear from talking to you that we could do an 8-part series on every single thing we've talked about. We could go deep on all of this. Take me back in time, little Stevie days. What was it like growing up? Did you know you were going to be a marketing thought leader, teaching everybody, getting the word out, changing what sales and marketing really does?
The short answer is no. I never really intended to do this, which I think you can put together if you look at my education. So I moved around a lot when I was very young.
Sure.
My dad was in IT in the early 80s in the Midwest. And so, not Silicon Valley. And so we moved around a lot because, jobs changed and it was a really evolving industry. And I think I went to, um, let me think, I want to get this right. I went to like 4 schools before third grade,
What,
4 or 5
before third
before
grade?
third grade. The first year I completed
Jeez.
the first year I completed a year in school was second grade. Like I moved once during kindergarten, once during first grade, second I finished second grade and then we moved again. So 4 schools before third grade. And what that did is it gave me, I was young, so I was very flexible and truthfully, like now I don't remember everything. But what it did was it gave me this curiosity to learn about new environments and it gave me a flexibility to, you know, I didn't use this word back then, obviously, but like I can pivot into new situations easily because I would kind of be, I got used to being the new kid. And I think too, what that did for me is it developed my curiosity and it also made me like I'm not actually super extroverted, like, I like to joke that I'm kind of a hermit. Like, I'll
Yeah.
probably have to go sit in a room by myself for an hour after talking to you this long, Casey. Um, but that being said, like, I am gregarious. I do like meeting new people. I do like learning about new people, and I like learning what makes them tick. And so I think that really comes from that experience I had when I was young. I also was a voracious reader, and I still am. And I think
Mm,
that because I was experiencing all of these things out in the world. I was reading choose your own adventure books about ancient Greece, and I was reading, you know, fantasy books about lions and witches and wardrobes, and,
yeah,
really like learning about the world outside of, whatever small town in Wisconsin I was living in at the time. I
sure.
I think that made me become a seeker of knowledge and be really interested in, sort of magpie like claiming like acquiring some knowledge. And I think as I got older, where that kind of I really thought I was gonna go into journalism and write novels and win
Sure.
Pulitzers, and, yeah, I might still write novels, but I think as I got older, I graduated in a recession. I studied history
Mhm.
in my undergrad which was an amazing thing to major in, and I learned a lot about how to write clearly, how to make an argument, how to analyze information, both data and things that happen, and find a way to take that information and argue why we should do something differently or the same for a better future, which, in its essence is kind of what marketing is.
Yeah,
But I think, when I finished my education, it was, a recession, and I ended up taking a marketing job because that's what was available to me. And as I advanced within that, I was lucky enough to have some pretty incredible mentors and bosses. I'm gonna shout a
mhm.
couple of them out, Julia Knauss and Amy Schuster, who really, like,
Shout out.
nurtured me and showed me, like, the opportunity to continue to do the things I really love, being creative, thinking critically, investigating what makes people tick, and finding a way to motivate them, while also, I think creating a really like, one thing I'll say, and I don't know that people always look at this, but, like, marketing has given me a pretty great life,
Yeah,
and it was a way for me to, you know, have consistent employment, get to like, I got my second master's through tuition reimbursement. I can take care of my family. I can, you know, I've gone to some amazing events. I've gotten to do some amazing things. And I really think for me, so like little Stevie would never have imagined I'd be here. But like little Stevie also wouldn't have believed that like wireless headphones were a possibility. So like, and I think, you know, something I feel pretty strongly about when you look at the future in your own career is be open and be flexible, because you don't know what's going what doors are going to open, and be willing to walk through them, because a door opened for me when I went to work for Julia Knauss, and I walked through it, and I will never look back, and I'm so grateful for everything she did, and all of the care and feeding she gave to my career. And then I found others who, Amy, my boss at PTF, Dan Futrell, my boss now, Alli Manning at Challenger, you you know, they challenge me to do differently.
yeah.
They really care about you. They're all people who cared about me as a person and a professional, and I think that's what's gotten me where I am, and it's motivated me to want to nurture that in the people who my colleagues and the people who report to me.
Person and a professional. The whole person,
Yeah,
caring about you, the 24/7 you, not the hours that I see you or that your light is green on Slack, right? It's that
yeah,
whole person. And it's almost like nothing you wouldn't do for a great boss or mentor like that gives their time. I guess the crazy thing is, because I saw a post on a community recently, was, hey, who'd be interested in mentorship or whatnot, and everyone was chiming, and that was good because, like, man, you gain so much from getting in either with a boss or a mentor. You gain so much from that, but you also gain so much from giving. your
Yeah.
time and attention. And so cool that you can full circle it now and start guiding other people, and hopefully even more people after they hear this, you can guide them through the right way.
Well, I don't have all the answers, but the one, the experience I have, like I want to share it. Like I think something, like when I was prepping for this, I was thinking about a lot is what really motivates me in the end. And I think, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but ultimately I am someone who is motivated by making things better. Like, I think that I really love the old saw about the campfire rule, like, leave things better than you found them.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
I try to take that into my personal life, but I absolutely take that in my professional life. And I don't think it's at odds with my career as a B2B, B2C marketer. It really is for me, like, what can we do to help people improve and grow? And that's what gets me up every day and keeps me in this profession.
100%. Where can people, they want to contact you, contact Challenger, learn more about any of these things? Where do you want them to go?
Yeah, so a couple places. So one, please visit challengerinc.com. We have a phenomenal resource center that my senior content manager, Claire Imber, and our director of demand gen, Bree Bush, update pretty consistently. Lots of great stuff there. We've got webinars on demand. We've got episodes of our podcast, which is currently on hiatus, winning the Challenger sale, but tons of gems. Most of our episodes are 20 to 30 minutes. So you will learn a lot.
Yeah.
Together, I think those webinars and podcasts are really a masterclass. We also have a lot of white papers, pillar pages, blogs, lots of content to really help you know what you need to know about how to succeed with modern selling. I think, that's sort of my current work. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, Stevie Kuenn, Kuenn. So please feel free to go there, shoot me a message. And then I also, like, quite honestly, I'm an Instagram user. And my handle is at SMKUENN. I do have a private account, but, as long as you're a real person, I'll probably approve you. If you're a bot, forget it.
Hear that, bots? Do not apply. Otherwise, everyone go reach out and connect.
Yeah.
Stevie, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. The things that we were able to chat about and the nuggets and the takeaways, I've just opened my mind to thinking about multiple generations that we're selling to, and that the feels don't always have to feel right and natural for me. If I'm not the customer, there may be some other thoughts that I have, and it challenged myself. I think you, fittingly so, have challenged me um, to think differently about who I'm selling to. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Casey. I am not, one of the things that I always joke about is I didn't go into marketing because I like to be the center of attention. I went into it because I like to help other people be the center of attention.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of a out of my comfort zone a little bit. But when you came to me and said, like, "Hey, I'd really love to have you," I decided to embrace the opportunity and do what feels counterintuitive to myself and join. And I'm glad I was able to share some of these things, and I hope your audience appreciates them. And I've certainly learned a lot, from other marketers, and I always love to meet other people struggling with some of the same things I am and learn what they've learned. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Absolutely. You had the hard part for sure. You've earned that hour of quiet by yourself after this, because when you're hosting, you just get to ask questions and expose how much you don't know, and be like, I don't know, tell me more. And then you just get to learn. So you've done a great job. You've crushed it. I've learned a ton. And for those listening, if you have learned a ton, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, running out of space, arrows drawn all over the place. If you've learned like I have, then share this with like one other person. 9 people, 4,000 people, whatever the number. But like, put what you learned. What was your takeaway? Was it about the generations? Was it about what people are doing and how they act, not just what they say? Was it the feels? What was it? Was it the takeaway of John's book about Pat? Whatever it was, tag myself, tag Stevie. Let's have a little convo on LinkedIn. And that's thought leadership. Get that good information out there. With that, thank you again so much.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Casey.
Heck yeah. Guys, this has been a crazy cool episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.